Hey, everybody, welcome back for another episode of Startup Sense. This is your host, Jonah Lupton. Today on the phone, I have an awesome guy. It's Tom McLeod from Omni. Tom, how are you?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Awesome. Where are you calling us from today?
San Francisco, California.
Is that where the company's based?
We are. We're based here in SF.
Awesome. So just before we kind of jump in and start talking about the company and a lot of cool, topics, just give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, I went to American University in Washington, D.C. I'm from New Jersey originally. I studied computer science and audio engineering, so a lot of engineering. This is my fourth company. I've been in the music side of things for the audio engineering degree. I've done a consumer SaaS model with the content management system. I've done consumer iOS, launched about 17 iOS apps. And this is the big swing here at Omni, working on logistics and storage.
You must be tired. It sounds like a lot of stuff.
Honestly, the businesses, I think if you ask anyone, you're always a little tired, but the businesses and the team gives you a bunch of energy. So you got to feed off of that.
Awesome. So tell us about Omni. What does the company do?
So, I mean, the easiest way to think of it is as we're full service storage for your things. So you hit a button on your phone and someone shows up at your house, takes away the stuff that you don't necessarily need, but still want access to. So think skis, think golf clubs, think seasonal clothing, think luggage, baby gear. We take that, we photograph and inventory every single one of those items back at our facilities. You get a photo record of everything, and you can request any item brought back in as soon as 2 hours. So you can say, bring me my tent and my sleeping bag and my canteen. I want it to meet me at my house at 4 p.m. on Friday. And just like magic, it shows up back there.
That is magic. I love it.
Yeah.
So most of us have had a bad experience with, storage units. I'm going through one right now. Where was the pain point for you when you just woke up one day and you're like, you know what? I got to do on-demand storage.
Sure. I mean, I think the pain point is similar to yours. I had obviously an interaction with, I had moved from DC to San Francisco. And the day after I moved into a storage unit. And I just realized that it was an experience that I didn't particularly enjoy the experience. I didn't like the setup. I didn't like the location. I didn't like not knowing sort of where my things were and the restricted access. And I also realized I was storing things that I still wanted to use. It wasn't the same way that my mom and dad were storing stuff or other people had stored stuff. Most people I knew were originally used to store things because they had a problem they needed to solve. So it was something had come up in their life, a death, a divorce, a downsize, a marriage, a kid moves off to college and you want to free up the room. I was sort of like, I need to store some tennis rackets and I need to store like extra bedding for the winter. And these are things that I actually want to keep and I care about the condition and I care about having access to them. And I started looking at what would be a system that would work for me, assuming I'm not alone, with that problem.
Right. I mean, you look around the house and there's a lot of things that you only use for 3-6 months out of the year. And when you're living in San Francisco, LA, New York, Boston, the big cities, you're very limited with space in most cases. So it's like, I don't want to throw it out. I don't want to just sit in the corner and take up space. So then you get a storage unit and then you have this horrible experience. So when did the company actually get started? When did you find your co-founders? How did you find your co-founders? And then what was the next step after that?
Sure. So it started at the end of 2013. Was when it was kind of like, I need to do this. I started building out the business model, the initial plans, the early deck, talking to friends around like the efficacies of the business. Like, is this something I can actually build? Is this something that should be built? Did some small tests. About 3 months into that, I started, on a quest for co-founders. I had realized that I was building a logistics company, and while I had some consumer mobile background and I'd run stuff before, I'd never done logistics as a core business. So I found my co-founder Aaron, who had just exited a logistics company that did music merchandise fulfillment on the internet. So they ran warehouses, and if you had bought a Rihanna tour T-shirt or like a James Taylor guitar pick, it probably came from one of his warehouses. And then my other co-founder, Adam, had actually worked with me on a company about 5 years prior. And he had interned originally and then was clearly one of the most talented guys I'd ever worked with. but we never scaled that business into a place that we were really staffing up. And he went to work for a group called Summit Series to do design and production there. And after about 4 years there, he was sort of looking for new opportunities. We were talking, and I was like, "Why don't you come and be my guy over here? You're a Renaissance man. You've now done production, design, coding, web. You have a degree, like some understanding of logistics, business operations." And he joined the team, and the three of us got to the work of building a business.
Now,
that was about July 2014.
A company like this sounds like it could be capital intensive. So I assume you guys raised some money early on.
Yeah, we raised about, in different tranches, but all in the seed. The angel seed round was about $2.7 million.
And how did you guys find those investors?
I will say perks of having, to a certain extent, built some businesses before. There were some people that I'd interacted with in the past that were interested in what the next thing would be. Perks of moving to San Francisco is that, you're working in the industry that funds the industry here. So, using the network that I established to talk to people who were interested in investing in early stage startups that fit their profile. So a lot of intros for intros, a lot of meetings and working on that.
And with the seed capital round, was it mostly angels, or was it a mix of angels and micro VC funds?
Yeah, it was a mix of angels and micro VCs and major funds. I mean, we had, Formation 8, which is, they were, I think at the time they had $1 billion in their management. They invested on the seed. Flybridge Capital invested on the seed. Bolt invested on the seed. A lot of strong angels invested. It was a pretty mixed bag. A lot of people liked the idea and believed that it was a good place to put some capital in because there's a long-term event horizon.
Right. I mean, certainly, I'm sure most of the investors that you talk to, like myself and like yourself, have all had that horrible, storage experience at one point in their life. And everything's, nowadays is about convenience and on demand and using mobile. And it just seems like a beautiful intersection of all those things.
100%. I think people understood a few things. When you actually start researching the market, you do learn that it's a lot bigger than people think. I don't know if you've ever done any research around that, but it's
tens of billions,
tens of billions of dollars. I think the U.S. market is roughly $27 billion a year.
Wow.
It's 30% are held by the largest five IPO companies, like the 5 publicly traded companies, which is like U-Haul, Public Storage, Extra Space Storage, etc. But the vast majority, 70%, are just small mom and pop regional chains. So There's a lot of room to wiggle in there, and a lot of fragmentation in a really large market, which is pretty attractive. Certainly to venture capital, when you're like, okay, this could be the time to unify a fragmented large market under a single technology banner, right?
Now, do you guys use your own employees to do a lot of the service work, like going to the person's house or apartment, picking everything away, taking pictures, boxing it up? Is that your people, or do you guys typically outsource it to other contractors?
It's actually completely our people. We believe that one of the secret sauces of the business is that, because it is recurring revenue, because we have a model that doesn't just pay for itself in one interaction. There's continued interaction with Omni. You sort of become a member almost of Omni, but once you start to use it, it's a lifestyle. That making sure that we have employees that both represent that culture, that they're concierges, they're ground control, they're part of our team, and they're a critical part of the team. They interact with every single customer. Everyone that uses the app has some experience with a concierge or a person on the team, and so we believe very much in hiring the best people and retaining the best people, which is the most important in a time and place, certainly in San Francisco, where perception of service industry jobs are that they're temporary fixes. We're looking to hire long-term career potential people.
That's awesome. I mean, like most of us know, people are really the core of your business. Without the right talent, it's really hard to grow a company. Every level. how often are customers using the service? Meaning, once you guys come pick up everything, take the pictures, store it. How often are they contacting you, or hitting that button and wanting something and wanting you guys to bring something back to them?
Yeah, most people use us, once a month or so in some capacity, either more in or a checkout. So we see steady growth. Almost every single account on average grows over the course of its first 5 to 6 months in the system. So, once you break the seal, once you start going in with Omni, you start to think about what else can I put in? How this is such a good tool for my lifestyle. We see those accounts grow. We see people refer friends. That's where most of our growth is through, referral, like actual viral network effect growth. That's where we focus most of our money. Low ad spend, low CAC, low consumer cost of acquisitions. It's mostly the people. And again, that's why we double down on the team anywhere we can, because we know people in both ways, both the users that we have and the people that we employ are driving most of our growth.
Yeah, because when I moved into downtown Boston, and I only had 650 square feet of apartment space, I had to put some stuff in storage, and the building actually had some storage units, but there was like 400 units in the building, and there's only like 50 storage units. So there was like a 2-year wait list to get a storage unit, and the nearest outside of Boston, the nearest storage place was like 10-15 minute drive, with no traffic. So there just wasn't a lot of good options, and I'm sure most cities probably have similar problems.
And what's even interesting is those storage cages, like the 50 units down there in the basement. That's an option that they chose to build in there. That if the building chose to just use Omni, like the building could just use Omni as an amenity, right? And not build that, they could actually 2-for-1 their amenity options. They could take those 50 storage units and build a business center or a gym or a pool or more parking or other in-demand items, while still being able to offer service on the storage side with a service like Omni. So we do a lot of talks with real estate development companies and high rises around how to continue to integrate Omni as a service into their buildings.
Actually, I'm glad I actually thought, I'm glad I mentioned that, because you're right. That's an enormous market. And every developer is looking to, maximize every inch of space they have in their building. So
totally
wanted to be, I think, I'm sure they charged me for it, but they probably could have made way more money if they had been able to convert those into, some other revenue generating space. So you guys are in what areas so far?
San Francisco and Oakland.
Okay. So how do you determine, when is the right time to expand and where you might expand from the Bay Area?
Yeah, we look at a lot of factors on that. So, one side, you look at shared resources. So that says, open up a somewhat adjacent city. So a Los Angeles or Seattle or Portland, something that we can still use the facilities to a certain extent, and we can quickly move teams around if we had to on the same sort of coast, quick, cheap flights. Other side is you look at population density, which sort of makes you look at East Coast cities or Chicago. You look at seasonality. The West Coast doesn't really have seasons in the dramatic way that Boston, New York, DC, Philadelphia have. So that's a thing we want to learn about. So we're sort of looking at all those options right now to make a decision on where you go next. But it'll probably be some combination of those factors, figuring out which is the deterministic path to really get the most value out of it, and the best chance to have the best value for our customers. That's what we're looking at right now. But we're probably looking at sort of late Q1, early Q2 of next year for getting a market up and running outside of where we're at, like a completely separate region.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned that customer referrals is really your biggest growth driver so far, which is phenomenal. It means people love the product, they love the experience. How else are you guys acquiring customers besides referrals?
Yeah, we do a lot of local, a lot of events, tabling, street teams, type stuff. A lot of things where we have relatively high touch, high converting tools. We spend very little on buying users, like very little on mobile ad spend, very little on SEO. Most of that is just either defensive or just to keep our name growing in some capacity around awareness. We find that just having the vans wrapped, like just the vans driving around the city with all of our information on it is a great lead source. Things like that. Anywhere we can be scrappy and acquire users affordably while still knowing that users actually are the tool that creates the most users is kind of where we're focused right now.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I can see where, I mean, once you start to get, a couple different customers in the same building, I can see where word just travels. I mean, I've actually never been to San Francisco, shame on me, but I'm sure you have some, gorgeous luxury apartment buildings where people
Sure.
can afford this service. They want to get some stuff out of their apartment. They don't like the other options. And once their neighbor mentions Omni, they're like, oh my God. And I can just see where, you get a lot of signups that way.
Totally. And, you see the van parked outside. What's that? What's their service? I've seen this van 3 times this week. What is it? Oh, okay, I should use that. That kind of stuff. So a lot of brand awareness, plus users, is the focus on growth.
Let's talk about hiring, right? Hiring in the Bay Area is so hard, so competitive. A lot of VC-backed companies. How do you find your best people?
We have various tools. We get some degree of luxury that I think we're taking a really big swing. If you look at the market in the last 2 years, you've seen a lot of people that were like a lot of the big swing companies are sort of either they've made it. You have your Ubers, your Airbnbs, these companies that were the big swing companies 5 years ago. They're now just big companies. You know where they're headed. They're going to be successful. They're doing stuff. This next round of companies that have come up after this are, you're seeing a little bit of market pullback on fundraising and capital, and you're starting to see a lot more enterprise software come back into the market. You're seeing a lot more B2B stuff. And when you look at Omni, we're a consumer-driven, big blue ocean, brave new world type business, and that is attractive. So just the core nature of the business, I think, allows us to recruit great people because, when you move out here, which most people do, certainly when you're looking at engineers, there's a lot of imported engineers from all over the country and all over the world. They want to be a part of something huge, and that's sort of what I work on. I'm like, come out here, join Omni, change the way people think about ownership, change the way they think about how their things work, how they keep them, how their apartment, how lifestyle looks like. That's a great opportunity for a lot of people, and that's what we focus on is you want to work here because this is what you came here for. Like, this is the job. This is the one.
I mean, I think you're right. A lot of people in San Francisco, the Bay Area, they're there because they want that. Their ambition is to work for the next, Facebook or Uber or whoever might be, the next unicorn, as they want to call it. And, maybe they're at a company right now and they've been there for a couple of years and they're getting a little bored, or they look around and like, you know what, this is a nice company. This could be a 10, 20, $30 million company in a couple of years. I want to go find the next big thing. And I mean, last week I interviewed the founder of Shippo. So they're like the Stripe for shipping.
Shippo's great.
I see them getting huge. I see you guys getting huge. Like, I just feel like you guys have just nailed, you're going to crush a market that needs innovation and disruption. Like, there hasn't been any in a long time in the storage market. I doubt anybody out there that's using any of those big storage companies loves them. They've never had that type of experience, where they go to their friends and brag about U-Haul or Public Storage. Like, no, it doesn't happen. But you guys, you're changing it. So that's awesome. What type of value have your investors brought to the company?
Oh, I mean, it's varied and wide, I think. In some cases, just being a founding board. So, any of our investors that have been former operators, it's always good to have people that you can sort of say, like, how would you think about this situation? Remember when you guys were scaling XYZ? What does that look like? I think there's the number one value I personally find for most investors is bringing you to more capital. So, certainly with a business like us, like you described, we are, relatively CapEx heavy. This isn't a light company. We have vans and trucks and racking and employees. We're not a photo app. And because of that, to hit the scale we want, we've chosen a path that is high growth, high capital, big reward, big risk. Yep. And knowing that you have investors that are not only invested because of their end goal capital, but are invested in making sure they can bring you to more capital when needed is huge. That's definitely been helpful multiple times going forward with the business. I think in some cases, BD and hiring will probably more so later. but just knowing that you have people that are constantly looking at deals and are in deals and giving you heads up on, this company that I invested in, probably not doing so great, but there's amazing people there. Would you be interested in talking to XYZ person there? Those types of things. Getting you access to hiring pipelines ahead of time before you're fighting 40 companies, when you're only fighting 3 or 4. Those types of things. It's been a process, and I think making sure you realize that you run that process is important. But there is a constant value that I find I get from my investors over and over and over again. Even if they're just, I think it's interesting. If you think, it's obviously a political season right now. If you just think about investors as surrogates, like there's no way I can talk to as many people as 40 people talk to. So if you're at top of mind, if you're one of their favorite investments, if you're doing well, you've got bodies out there doing forward-facing PR for you. They're meeting, right. If you're meeting 5 people a day and they're all meeting 5 people a day, you're looking at hundreds of people per day that are sort of hearing about Omni, and that's important. So I would never underestimate the power of investors as a marketing tool, which is also a very viable reason to think about how people are strategically stacked in any given round.
What's the single best piece of advice any of those investors have given you so far?
Oh man, I think I don't know if there was a specific phrase, if it was like, this is the phrase that sticks with me, but definitely an overarching understanding of the ebb and flow of running a company. You get to this point where you understand that companies are built by people. They're not built by a person. They're not built by me. They're built by those who I hire. You're not running on rails. You're running on, in some cases, ice, in some cases, dirt, in some cases, sand. It's understanding how to constantly adapt the run and the pace and what you're doing to go there. And every investor that's given me advice that's really stuck have been people related, personnel related, understanding capital, understanding how to relate to the team building side of it, because that is, as you said earlier too, the most important part.
Awesome. How much time and effort and thought do you and your founders put into building the right culture at Omni?
For me, it's a huge amount of time. I think that's kind of my job. I'm not a technical founder in this company. It's gone well beyond my engineering skills. Most of my job is fundraising, it's hiring, it's long-term vision, it's tough decisions. And I think, besides specifically the fundraising piece, every other one of those things is a cultural piece. So every other part of that, in some cases, is who do you bring in? What are you looking for at any given time? Why are people working on this? How are you aligning what you come in to do today with what we need you to do tomorrow? Those types of things. So I think culture is a massive part. And I think you have to be deliberate with culture. I would never mask that. I'm always looking to bring in diversity in people, diversity in thought, diversity in everything that we do with the business, because we feel like Omni specifically is a company that has a lot of touch points with people's things and people's lives and interactions, and having the widest knowledge base internally here at the company for handling unique situations will get us the furthest, the fastest. So yeah, I couldn't put a percent on it, but I think a lot. I spent a lot of time thinking about culture.
What is the thing that keeps you up at night that you worry about the most while building this company? Is there one thing that sticks out in your mind?
Oh man, again, it tends to come back to people. It's we're not 4 people anymore that are just co-founders. We're around 40 people, and make all the decisions we make now in this company. We've proven to a certain extent product market fit. We've proven that people want the service. We see strong growth numbers. We see revenue coming in. What we're looking for now is line of best fit. Omni can go numerous different directions from here, and they can all take us towards great success or great failure or minimal success. It's still an open-ended decision, but there will be a line that we kind of have to figure out. And what keeps me up at night is making sure I'm using the right data points and getting the best input to push forward where we go next. Right. Every single day. What is this little steps, lots of little step functions, sloping towards, strong business level growth.
What does your typical day look like? Are you in the office? Are you out meeting with people? Are you like, I'm sure it varies day to day, so it's kind of hard to, pigeonhole it, but.
Yeah, it definitely varies day to day, but I'm a pretty big believer in office. Like, I'm a pretty big believer in a lot of things get done when a lot of people are around. Also, a lot of the best ideas come up when there's a lot of people around. So I like to get in here. I usually do a little work early when I first get up, do a little work, get ready, then go into the office, work for a while. Most of my days are at this point sort of meetings, briefings, hiring, interviewing, that type of stuff. I do a lot of tours, a lot of tours of the Omni facility,
Really?
showing off some of the stuff we've done.
Who wants the tours?
Lots of people.
Really?
It's interesting, from journalists to investors that are interested in, when are we raising capital again? They want to see progress stuff. They want to make sure they're on the list for getting a shot at it. Complementary businesses, BD relationships, people we're doing partnership deals with. I'm sure I do 1 to 2 tours a day now. I got a little path. It's kind of fun.
That means you must be doing something right over there.
Trying. Yeah. Always trying to do something right.
What is the hiring process like? I mean, does the candidate meet with all the founders, or do you guys actually have a full-time in-house recruiter?
No, we actually don't use a recruiter at all.
Okay.
I think there's a time and a place for a recruiter, and I think at those times they're particularly valuable. I think right now we're still, like I said, we have the luxury of some decent inbound. We have the luxury of what I think is a pretty interesting product. So that gets us a good starting point from the recruitment side. If you're looking at tech talent, I actually try to do all the initial phone or in-person interviews. That way I don't waste engineering time. I think right now it's critically important for the engineers to stay hyper-focused on what they're building. And if it would be a worse experience if, they did a technical review, got really excited about a person, and I was just like, I don't think this is the right fit for the company. This way I can sign off ahead of time that if you guys give them a thumbs up or give her a thumbs up, we're at a point where this could actually happen. So, a lot of it is I like to do all the first round interviews, or a co-founder gets in on those. And if it's for, marketing, content, copy, comms, anything like that, I usually let one of our heads of those departments do those early interviews, and then I come in later. But with engineering, I always go first.
Gotcha. Okay. What's been the biggest surprise so far in the last couple of years since, you and your founders came together? 2 years later, you guys are growing fast. You've hired a lot of people. What's been the big surprise? Anything?
I think we've actually managed to make a lot of correct guesses on some things, on just what the business would look like. It looks pretty much like we thought it would look. I think we learned a lot about the hypothesis on how to charge people. We've played with pricing a lot.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Pricing's got to be tricky, right?
Pricing's super tricky because, people are used to visual pricing for space. This idea that you get a 4x5 or a 1x2 locker, or, you think of it in square footage, and we don't talk about space at all. We talk about the item because we're built around the item itself.
Okay.
And that definitely took a lot of iterations to get to a point where that was both easily digestible, easily explainable, and made business sense. We had to get up and running with a bunch of different tests to get to where we are now. That we've been really comfortable with the pricing that we have now for almost 8 months since launch. So,
what is the pricing model? Is there a flat fee, and then it goes up from there depending on how much stuff the person has, and then you guys charge for individual trips on product, bringing product back to them?
Well, it's actually there's just 3 fees associated with the storage piece, and it's just based off of the size of an item. We like to use travel analogies because our users tend to be heavy travelers. They tend to be people who understand travel as a concept. So if it fits in a carry-on bag, it's 50 cents per item a month. If it's bigger than a carry-on bag, it's $3 per item per month. And if you want to check in a sealed container, so like a large Tupperware container, filled with holiday ornaments, it's $7.50 a month just to store a container.
Okay.
So that's
and you guys
basically
essentially
how it breaks down.
You guys are really providing all the containers and boxes, right?
Yeah. So we move them in and out with bags and containers. If you give us your own container, we just store it in the containers that you give us.
Okay.
But we don't do like a box model where we drop off a box and you fill it. You literally can just hand us a tennis racket or hand us 6 toasters. We take it and we individually bag, seal, and store each item.
What's the most that any one person is probably paying you per month for all their stuff?
We've got people in the $1,000 range.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was their situation? Do you happen to know?
I don't directly know. I also probably wouldn't disclose it if I did know. As in, obviously user behavior is both secret and private to the user. We don't really infer that much. But my guess is it was probably someone who had a storage unit that they were moving out of, they'd had for a while, or they were moving homes potentially into a smaller space, something like that. That tends to be what we see when you see a large amount of items, like a huge amount of items. You start to see that type of behavior.
What is the length of stay? Maybe that's not the right term for it, but the length of stay for the storage industry overall. Like how many months does the average person keep their storage unit?
Storage industry overall, you see somewhere between like 14 and 18 months.
Okay.
So roughly a year and a half. What tends to happen is storage solves a problem, and then storage becomes a problem, and you have to solve for it. You start to say, like, why am I paying this money? Blah, blah, blah. We actually expect to have significantly larger and longer value to a person because we're storing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're storing things that you actually want to keep a relationship with. They define you to a certain extent. There are things like snowboards and stuff that you actually want to use, you want to keep. They're part of your life. They're part of your personal culture, that type of stuff, as opposed to things you just want to forget about until you have to remove. So we expect you to probably we expect Omni to probably have lower top line heavy revenue, as in, we're not going to get as many people putting hundreds and hundreds of dollars in because of, the type of stuff that we store. But we expect you to stay with us for 5-6 years. As long as space is either an issue or a thing that you want to simplify, we're a better solution than, keeping things under your bed or losing a hall closet to a piece of like a large piece of luggage.
I can see where if you guys are staying in the big cities, someone that lives in San Francisco loves the city, they're probably going to stay in the city for a while. So they're not expecting to have any more space anytime soon.
Yeah. And you also get to stay in the city longer, right? Like a lot of the reasons for leaving a city are, potentially you found a partner and you have a child on the way, and it's like, okay, got to move out of here, got to get more space. We have people who have turned walk-in closets into nurseries because of Omni, giving them the ability to stay in a city that they love to work in and have shorter commutes, thereby creating more time with their families. Like there's all these other things that show up when you start to use Omni in creative and novel ways. So we really feel like we're fitting a gap for people that, traditional storage just doesn't work for them.
What's your favorite piece of software? Do you guys, I'm sure you guys built a lot of your own software for internal use, but any third-party software that you really love that you use on a daily basis?
If you look at what we use on a daily basis, we're a Slack and Asana company.
Okay.
So we do use those tools for general communication and task management. I think what's becoming really powerful here is we've switched a lot of our data and visualization stuff over to a tool called Periscope. And Periscope is great for sort of building out data-driven dashboards with the data that's being pumped out of your users and your entire company, from Excel model forecasts to profit and loss to how many pickups are doing a day to how many people are working at any given time. It pulls in a lot of stuff to give you kind of an understanding of your business from a very fast, digestible, and in some cases beautiful, holistic approach. And that is quickly growing as we start to really unlock the potential of it into a place I check every single day.
Do you have any goals, like specific goals with some of those metrics, like what what your hopes for the company is in month-over-month growth with revenue or pickups? Like, do you keep an eye on one number?
I mean, we're tracking a goal. I mean, we have a goal for everything. I don't think there's anything that happens in Omni that doesn't have a goal, from like an individual event to try to get new users to monthly goals for on-time performance to, yearly and quarterly goals for revenue and overall metric growth. We are definitely a goal-driven, goal-based, goal-hitting company.
Awesome. Trying to think. I mean, I've kind of rattled through all my questions. Anything that, any advice that you would want to share with someone else looking to start a company in the next year, which is, I think, a big portion of who my audience is?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one piece is pre-planning is unbelievably important. So taking the time to really sit there and, it's easy to just fudge numbers into a place that looks like you have a good business, but really being honest with yourself, going through every bit of it, just doing the work ahead of time will save you so many headaches down the road when you quickly are like, oh, something's moving quickly. Success a lot of times for people is this combination of it's almost luck, right? But luck is you make your own luck. It's this idea of preparedness and timing. And so making sure you have that preparedness piece when someone's like, hey, this is a great opportunity. I need you to be there on Wednesday. Do you have business cards? Do you have logo and brand identity? Do you have service up and running? Like, you want to always be able to say yes to amazing potentialities. And that means you're probably doing a lot of work ahead of time and will continue to, that will show its value later, but you need to do that work. You never want to be in a position where you can't take an amazing opportunity or do something fantastic because you haven't done the work that you could have done well ahead of time, waiting on something else to happen. So
what's your
prep?
Prep and focus.
Yeah.
What is your top goal, both personally and professionally, over the next 6 months? So what's this, November? So let's say May 1st. Like, what's one personal goal that you want to have accomplished between now and May 1st?
I'd like to cross, 50 employees. We're at 42 now. I'd like to see, steady growth on there, continuing to expand and grow a strong team. And need to. I want the business to tell me I need to get there. I could hire 8 more people today, but I want to show growth in the ways that matter there. That's sort of, a professional, personal piece. I'd love to continue to do more of these. I like doing podcasts and talking to people awesome. and getting out in front of everyone. I've worn a lot of hats, both in this business and previous ones. So always happy to share when I have some time, especially if it's also, beneficial to my work. So I'd love to see more of that in the next 6 months for sure. That would be great.
And I'm sure you guys probably have a lot of demand coming out of some other big cities, people begging you to come to their area and, offer this type of service. That's good. Yeah.
We do, for sure. Tracking that.
So 2 fun questions I kind of like to end each show with is, if you could get mentored by any entrepreneur in the country or any individual person, who would it be?
Poof. That is a great question. I think, but there's like the easy one, and there's kind of the less the less obvious one. I think I'd love to get some time with Jeff Bezos, just because I think his strategy, how he built Amazon, I think the logistics heavy portions of that, all those different pieces coming from a general business background and building clearly the world's largest logistics company for consumer stuff would just be could not hurt to have a person like that to ping questions off of.
For sure.
So I'd love that. I also am interested and respect a lot of just general business leaders across different things. So I'd love to get some time with maybe some people that are doing stuff in music and art and other stuff that understand how to create sound and movement and vision that gets people on a real base level. I find like the idea of like pop music and stuff like that is really interesting to me. How you can create something that millions of people across different strata, from race, gender, location, sexuality, all kind of resonate with, and are like, I like that song, or I like that movie. I'd love to pick the brains of creatives that are on the business side to understand how they look at those challenges, because I think that applying that to a non-core creative business would be super helpful for understanding human behavior, especially in a business that definitely touches people, because we're touching your things, so to speak, and that's and getting that value out would be amazing. So people in that level from those different industries also.
I feel you. When I was younger, not even young, when I was in college, I mean, I went the Wall Street path, after college, but if that door hadn't been open, the two things I wanted to do the most were either be a magician or be an EDM club DJ.
Yes.
And
either of those would have been fun.
Very fun. You travel, you make people happy, you put, smiles on people's faces. But of course I went the Wall Street way and do the opposite.
I think EDM DJs today are almost magicians.
Yeah.
And they make enough lights and fog and
those top guys make so much money. It is mind blowing.
Yeah.
And then
it's wild.
Last question. What's your favorite TV show?
All time or right now?
Let's do right now.
Right now, I am kind of obsessed with Atlanta, which is on FX. It just wrapped season 1.
Okay. Never heard of it.
This guy Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, he wrote, directs, stars in. I think it's just kind of like I don't know. It's got Twin Peaks vibes. There's some random non sequiturs that happen. I think it's a great show. All time, I'm probably still some kind of a Star Trek Next Generation X-Files guy. If I look at what's brought me the most all-time happiness, what could I actually what have I done full rewatches of? I've literally done full Star Trek TNG and X-Files rewatches, and that is hundreds of episodes.
Old school Star Trek with oh god, I can't even remember his name. Who did the
Kirk?
Yeah. Wow, that's from what is that, 80s or 90s?
Well, TNG is Picard, and that's 87 to 94 type stuff.
Wow.
I was a kid when I watched it the first time, and I still love I still can watch an episode tonight. I'll probably watch some today now that I've thought about it.
It's just funny when I ask that question. I always get I can never anticipate what the answer is going to be, and a lot of times the new shows that people are mentioning, I've never even heard of before. I've never even heard of Atlanta before. I forget yesterday's episode. I forget what they said, but I'd never heard of the two shows that they like. So I'm always looking for new shows to kind of get into. I've watched the same series over and over on Netflix, and I got to start finding some new stuff.
Sure.
Well, Tom, we'll end it there. I know you're a busy guy growing a big company. Thank you so much for being a guest. I really appreciate it. I think you guys are in a really, really cool space, a space that needs technology and innovation. So you guys are going to crush it, as you already are, but continued success along the path.
Thank you. If anyone has any thoughts or questions about anything I've said, I'm Tom@beomni.com. I'm down to get some more emails in my inbox every now and then.
Man, don't say
it. I did it. I put it out there.
So Tom@beomni.com. All this will go this will log up on the website, and then the website, of course, is beomni.com. So I'll post that. All the Twitter and Facebook and everything else. Are you guys more active on any specific social media channel?
Personally, or the company?
No, the company. Are they more?
The company, I think we're pretty active on Twitter. I'd say we're mostly Twitter. We're also pretty active on Facebook. Facebook is just facebook.com/beomni, I believe. So
okay,
we're pretty good over there too.
And then for anyone listening that's in the Bay Area, what types of positions are you currently hiring for?
We tend to be always hiring for Eng. We're definitely looking at more sort of brand ambassador people who are interested in trying crazy things on growth. If anyone's interested in trying the service, you can use promo code TOM, TOM. That is the best code. It just happens to be my name. And anything that you want to try on those capacities, we're down to. I'm always down to hear new ideas for things that you think you could do that would be beneficial too.
Cool.
I'm down to create a position around a person if you can bring in value.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Let you get back to your day, and feel free to come back anytime as a guest.
I will. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye.